Hey guys, welcome back to the SBP Podcast Mobile Filmmaking. I'm your host, Susie Botello, and you're listening to episode 165. Hey, we've got a great conversation tonight with our panelists for Fade into Film. And we're going to be making a movie with you. We're going to walk you through making a feature film with your smartphone by doing the pre-production. So obviously we can't do the production with you, but we can walk you through the pre-production process so you have everything organized and ready to go, and everything will be smooth sailing. It never is, but we're going to talk about that too. Jason Rivera is here, Levi Austin Morris, and Ryan McDonald is here for this episode of our Fade into Film panel. So let's go and let's talk to the guys. It's going to be a wonderful conversation that I know you're going to get a lot from.
We are Fade into Film.
Hey guys, I am here with Jason Rivera. Yay!
Hello, everybody.
And Levi Austin Morris. Yay!
Hello.
And Ryan McDonald. Yay!
Hey everybody, how's it going?
You always do your signature hello. And Joey, unfortunately, could not be here tonight. He almost was. But he couldn't make it because he's action directing for Michael J. White, who is a little bit famous. And he's more than a bit famous. But just want to give Michael J. White a shout out for taking Joey for tonight. And also, I want to, we had a really fun episode in our last episode for Halloween. Jason, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I just want to give you. I just want to let our listeners know that you, a big shout out for you doing the spooky music during our last episode.
Any chance I can use that auto harp, I'm gonna take it. So it was fun.
I love that.
And don't forget, don't tune it yet, because Levi said he's got plans for
spooky. Yeah.
Definitely, we'll keep it on tune.
So guys, we're gonna chat about a few things. First of all, I just want to. We're not gonna go all around the table or anything, but I want to congratulate Ryan. Ryan picked up like 10 awards or something last week, right?
No, yeah, thank you. So we ended up with 5, but out of only 10 awards that were provided at the festival.
Yeah, that's very impressive.
And it's the reason why I haven't been on the podcast for the last 2 episodes. So one of those nights there's a festival in Salt Lake City, and my team has contributed almost each year. And it's one of those where you're given like a certain line or a prop that you have to use. And so we were on the fence as to whether or not we were going to be doing it, because we were currently shooting things for the for like a video game. I kind of mentioned that on one of the other episodes. And so we were really down to the wire. So we shot a Wednesday night, Thursday night, and did pickup shots on Friday night, because this is after all of our day jobs kind of things. And then the film was due on that Monday. At midnight. So I edited through the weekend as much as I could, and then from Sunday night I put the kids to bed and I had some coffee, and I was up all the way through the night editing the film so that I could be done so I could hit the deadline on that Monday. So
I love that though. Like, I do love when you know that there's a deadline coming up and you're like down to the wire. I love like the overnight.
Oh my God.
Fun but stressful. Yeah.
And then the last time you guys recorded, I was at the festival, so that's why I couldn't be here. And it was we kind of have an outrageous idea. It's a retelling of, not a retelling, but so there's limitations. It could only be 7 minutes and 6 seconds long. And what I put together, I knew, because I storyboarded it, I knew I had about 80 shots, so I knew that each shot could only be 5 or 6 seconds long. Yeah. Everything. But it was a smash hit. Some people were. So it's like a retelling of Frankenstein, but in this case, the man is castrated, and then he rebuilds it together, and it turns into a monster.
I love that.
And it starts attacking him. So some people were horrified. Many people laughed. We won the audience award for that.
Yes.
We won best scare. We picked up best special effects, and then I won best director, and we won best film.
Good for you! Wow. Congratulations!
So yeah,
That's awesome.
I was extremely.
Was there like an award for the one with the most awards?
That was
you
just
won
the
it.
drive home. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I was really happy. I thought to myself, I was like, well, if we get special effects, I was like, we'll have that in the bag. Everything else, I didn't really. I was pretty surprised and blown away. So
Sure. Good for you.
Yeah.
That's so exciting.
That's awesome. And Levi is just still pounding on film festivals. So congratulations on that. Every time I go on social media, it's like Levi is announcing, by the way, we just got accepted into this other film festival. And it's like, wow, nice. Congratulations.
Well, and then Levi, you leave next week. And
yes, so I will not be here next time.
And then Sophie's film, my daughter Sophie, her film is at the same festival.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. So I'll be watching it.
Yeah.
I'll sneak some photos for you.
Awesome. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about some topics here. And those topics are going to be, this is going to be really fun, you guys. We're actually going to walk you and with you, and we're going to pre-produce a mobile feature film. We're going to do this together with our team, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But first, just a little reminder, this is where we would start with a bunch of ads that we would have to put in. Of course, as you listen to other podcasts, you know that they always do this and they put ads here. We're not doing that. I'm not putting any ads here. But at some point, I'm probably going to have to. But if you support and like and enjoy the SBP podcast, please go to Patreon or buy me a coffee. The links are in the notes, and help us out a little bit. That's all I'm going to say. Any words from you guys?
Do it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely support. Indie artists who are creating. And Susie's an incredible host, and so yeah, absolutely support.
Awesome. Thank you. So when you're making a mobile feature film, you probably want to get some funding for that. Something that you don't usually do all the time for a short film, right? But if you do decide to make a feature film, and you should, just like, our friend Levi, who made numerous short films, decided to make a feature film, and now he's the star and the king of the mobile film world with that feature film. But if you do decide to do that, you'll probably want to get some funding, and that's for another discussion where we'll go and we'll chat with Levi, and we'll talk about that. But for now let's say that you've got some funding and you're ready to start putting your film together. When I've worked on films, one of the things that I've noticed, you guys, and I wonder if this is different for you, but usually the pre-production involves a handful of people, if even. It's usually the DP, the director, and maybe the AD. And then
producer.
Yeah. Well, sometimes the producer ends up being, there too, but sometimes that's the same person, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But you're right. The producer has an important role in that, of course. And in a larger production, you have the manager too, the production manager, because that's the person that's going to bring in the rest of the crew. But you only have those people for quite a long time once you've got your screenplay, right? You've got these people together, and you're talking about, okay, now how are we going to make this happen? The next thing that I know that they did was to have casting calls, because without a cast, now we're talking about a narrative film, you guys. Without a cast, you've got nothing to shoot, really. And so those are the things that happen before you bring in the crew. Are you guys, has that been your experience as well? Let's start with you, Levi.
I mean, I think some of the things, the early phase things, I might do a little out of order. With our pre-production stuff, I definitely, like, we got the funding I wrote the script, then we got the funding. And as we were getting the funding, I was working on the storyboard and everything. And I, like, with the casting, I don't think casting technically has to come before those meetings. It just needs to come before you actually start shooting. So yeah, I mean, but I think there's a little bit of flexibility in, the order of some things, but there is absolutely specific things you have to have ready before you, before you start shooting.
So when you said before those meetings, were you talking about the initial meetings when you've got your 3 or 4 at the most key people?
So with Paralysis, it was mostly just me and my producer for the early meetings.
Right.
And it was like she was going through the script and figuring out all the props that were needed and all the locations that were needed. I was storyboarding. And then once we had that list, we started to sort of divvy out the responsibility of creating those props. And I did a lot of them and she did a few of them. So yeah, like I think it's just.
At what point did you get the casting?
I mean, casting, I think it's also different because Paralysis, I specifically wrote for specific people.
That's true.
There was only one role that we had to audition people for. And I think, I don't remember 100%, but actually I do believe we were doing casting during the crowdfunding.
Oh.
So while we were raising the funds, we saw that things looked like they were going in the right direction. So we were like, all right, this seems like it's going to happen. So let's go ahead and get casting in place.
Well, now I have another question for you, Levi.
Okay.
When you did the funding, at what point, you already had your screenplay during the funding.
Yes. Yeah.
Because those things, I mean, you pretty much do the screenplay before you go looking for it. Because if you have a screenplay, that's your pitch, right?
Well,
that's
that's
your solid, I'm going to do point. This, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for me specifically.
No, I
know
think
some
that's
people,
for a lot of people. It should be anyways, where you've got something tangible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's the jumping off point for sure, yeah.
And then at that point, so then you were doing, okay, I get it now. I think our listeners do too.
I'm just saying there's flexibility in the order of certain things, that's all.
And also because in the productions that I've worked on, for the most part, there are some key members of the crew that are regulars, but then everybody else is hired after.
Yeah, yes, and that happened for us. It was after we raised all the funds and we had everything in place. That's when we started to pull more crew. Yeah.
And I meant after the cast was in.
Yes. Yeah. That's how we did it. Is casting came first and then crew.
Okay. Cool. Ryan, how about you? And I know you also knew a lot of these people, but you had to do your casting call too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. I mean, and so the funding as well, that was out of my back pocket. I just had been saving money over the years, so to put together. I knew that one day I was going to make a feature film, so I just kind of always had it as my mattress cash that I put together.
Smart. That's so smart.
I saw a masterclass by Werner Herzog, and he was saying now, if you have to work some dead end job, day in day out for 10 years to save the money to make your movie, then I guess you're going to have to work that dead end job day in, day out for 10 years. And he was just like, that's what you do. So, but so I have yet to experience any kind of Kickstarter, but I think with feature film ideas that I have for what's next that I want to do, that's certainly the route to go. Mine, we did not have the casting all the way. I had a few people in mind One of the actors, Mike Solaris, I had already known and had worked with a few times, so I kind of already knew that he was going to be one of the husbands. And then I didn't know when I was ever going to have a chance to be in a feature film, so I added myself as one of them. So that kind of, and then also I don't have to pay myself either. So we had mentioned we'd mentioned the SAG stuff earlier, and so though nobody that was in the film it was union, but I did still pay like day rates though, like what the minimum union rate is. And then we put out a casting call, and it took we did probably about 3 different sessions, and just from the area that I'm in, because I'm in Utah, so I've mentioned this before, but there were certain things I was looking for. I knew I had a lot of colorful language in my film, and I certainly didn't want it to be something where people were going to hold back or not say the things that I wanted them to say, kind of thing. And in the area that I live in, it's sometimes you can just tell when someone just doesn't frequently curse. Right. And you can just hear it when they say it.
Yeah. Like, oh, there's hesitation.
Yeah. So that was something that I was looking at. But yeah, we put out casting calls. There are some talent agencies in Salt Lake City, and we had a number of people. And I probably auditioned 30 or 40 people.
It's amazing, even for the smallest of productions, the amount of people that show up. Utah, right, where you were. You wouldn't imagine to have that many people. But
Salt Lake, I do know Salt Lake has a very large, because I have a friend who's originally from Utah, and she did theater and stuff in Salt Lake for a while. And they have a very large sort of production, they've got a lot of actors who do theater and film. So I do know it's kind of a booming, industry as far as
there are some like sound stages, things like that you can shoot at. There's one they just built in Park City as well. Unfortunately, all of it is always outside of my budget range. That kind of sense. But so, and then there's a lot of people who are indie actors, and I mean, not to necessarily talk my film up in a sense, but with the type of film that I had with dialogue and things like that, some of the parts were, I don't know, it was just juicy, and people could tell when there's you have moments where people have a chance to actually act and bring emotions and scream and yell and monologues and things like that are just good to show off, instead of being like, okay, now walk inside this coffee shop and pretend that you like that girl or whatever. Here it's kind of like, hey, and this is where you're gonna run in there and you're gonna call him a mother effer and let's go. So
some of those when they're recorded come back years later, like the kids I know that child actors, some of them. I think I saw Henry Thomas from E.T. Who did did you see that?
I mean, he's pretty successful now. I don't know what you're saying.
Well, what I'm saying is his casting call for his audition for E.T.
And how emotional.
Oh man, he was he was all there, and they just were
incredible.
Yeah, he got the part right there and then.
Yep.
And so what I'm saying is you never know. So you're recording those usually. Now I know that a lot of people are now recording those things themselves, and then sending them in. But I think there's something to be said for putting people in front of the crew, basically, or the main people in the crew, and doing that and having them perform that way. I think it helps the actor, and I think it helps the director as well.
Yeah. We had a couple of video submissions.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Levi. We had a couple of video submissions, and some of them I did bring in. But for my film particularly, because it was a married couple, I needed to also see the people together.
Oh, chemistry. Yeah, you have to see chemistry for sure.
So I was trying to make sure I'm pairing the right two people together.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that was also part of it. But go ahead, Lee.
With Paralysis, we, I mean, it was still COVID technically when we were casting it. So everybody did do an initial submission via a self-tape. And then from there, we did over Zoom with me, my producer, my lead actress, and then the person that we hired for casting. So there was 4 of us and then whoever the actor was for the callback. So we had 2 audition stages. I think we had like, similar to you, Ryan, I think we had like 30 people submit, maybe more than that, but we only saw about 30 people for the initial round. And then I think we called back about 10. And then it really came down to the chemistry between the lead actress and this actress that made me go, oh my God, like this is who it is. So, yeah.
That's pretty awesome. I remember I was holding a casting call for a very small short film. And this is in 2015. And I literally got a text from them with the videos. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we did hold auditions and they couldn't make it, but they literally texted me. Oh, I'm sorry I couldn't make it, but here's
my audition. Interesting.
I was like, okay. But, okay, so obviously casting is a big deal. That's why I'm allowing this to go on this long, because it is a big deal. It's a very big part of your film, and it's very important that you get the right actors, and of course that they kind of get along. Even the villains don't have to hate the other actors. So you do want to, make sure that you get the cast, because that also can put your film off for some time. So sometimes what happens is if you don't have the right actors, for the part, then you have to hold another casting call and then another, and that'll take longer for you to, put your plan together and get the dates and get the location scheduled and things like that. And that's another reason why you want to get that as soon as possible and get that commitment as well. So then the next thing, I wanted to bring Jason into this because I know Jason has meetings, and I know that you like to be a part of the pre-production. I don't know how many chances you get to do that, Jason. Do you ever get to be a part of that?
For probably about half of the films that I've scored or
Nice.
So, I haven't had a chance to be in any of the meetings yet, but I've been on phone calls and conversations with the directors on some projects before they've even started shooting anything. And it's where, the script is done or close to being done, and I read it several times and then have discussions with the director based on that. I'll start writing. If they're okay with it, I'll start writing based off the conversations and the script.
How much information do you get? Because, on their end too, they've got the screenplay. They pretty much have an idea of the film, the tone, right, that they want to set with the music and all that. And then at one point, so they get really busy, they start cranking, during production. So during production, you're probably not able to have a lot of conversations with them, or are you?
Not usually. Once it starts getting going, at that point, the only interaction I'm having is I'm emailing them stuff that I'm working on, and, they're having some kind of response to it. And then, maybe we have some back and forth on that, but they're generally, at that point busy with other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're cranking.
Yeah.
I want to talk to Ryan about, because I think this is also, let's say now we've got the cast together and all of that. Now we've got to get the location set, right? Is that usually the next step?
At the stage, we already have our DP lined up. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The DP is like numero uno.
Early meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to start working on 2 different things at the same time. I mean, you have your cast together, but you need to start you're going to be looking at locations, and also have to think about what are they going to wear, right, as well. You have your cast, but they have to wear something. Is there a style? For instance, like in my newest short film that I was speaking of earlier, because some of it I was thinking of, we're looking at pieces of like Evil Dead 2, and I didn't know what I was going to have the main actor wear. And then I was watching we were looking at some parts of Evil Dead 2, and I thought to myself, I was like, well, just have him do that. It was black pants and a blue shirt. That's what we'll do. Make him look like Ash. And And
But by that time, you probably already had your location in effect. Because you can't. So here's the sequence, right, in chronological order for the most part. If we can put it that, I know some things kind of bleed into the other, but at the same time, it's like you do want to set some things down in stone so that these other things can take place, right? So you got your cast. And yeah, you're going to have wardrobe. There's no doubt about that. And sometimes that's part of your screenplay where you're defining what they're going to wear, right? And then you're going to do the props. You're going to do all that stuff. But you can't do the props and you can't design a set really all the way. I mean, you have a vision as a director of what you want your theme to be for all that stuff. But until you have a location set, because you guys know, you've been there, right? Where you're going, I want this location, and it's just not going to happen, and you have to do something else, right?
Yeah. Well, and the
shot list comes after that.
Yeah. Hopefully, if you wrote it yourself and you knew what your budget was, then hopefully you didn't write something in as a location that you can't have. Would be that part. So even with the short film I just did originally, it was supposed to be set at a police station, and so we started looking around for different locations that we could potentially use. That was going to be like an interrogation room, but I knew I was going to have a lot of blood and other effects, and I didn't want to have to work that over with whoever owned the location. Yeah. So then I started thinking of like, well, what if it was just in a garage? And then I was like, whose garage could I use? And then I own a house, and so then I was like, I'll just shoot it at my house. So now it's not at a police station anymore. It's actually just outside my house in the driveway, and I started reimagining those kind of things. But it did come down to the fact that I was like, with what we were going to be doing, there's a small explosion, we have some blood, and all this other stuff. I was like, I really don't want to have like.
So I worked on a short film, Ryan. I worked on this one short film where it was two old ladies, and they were literally using like those AK-47s or whatever they are that the SWAT team has.
Yeah.
We had, when you have connections, sometimes they'll get you things that you don't know you could have. So that's why I always tell people, you just write your thing. And then later worry, you can always make adjustments later.
Yeah. How you're gonna do it.
But yeah, they're walking around with these AK-47, or maybe they're something else, whatever they are. And they're two little old ladies. And what happened was that they break out, one of the episodes, they break out of the jail. And they're in a small town. And we found a small town, up in the mountains here, which was really just about 45 minutes, going up to the top, to the mountains here. And they had this old jail cell, Western style jail cell.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a little bit of a museum, but they talked to the Chamber of Commerce or whoever it was, and they allowed us to film there. And so you have these two little old ladies, and they had the thing, and they break out of the jail with knitting needles. And they walk out of there with that. Yeah, it's and I was working on this film, and it was just like it was so much fun. But anyways, so you just don't know what you can get. You just have to
just by asking. Yeah.
Because your friends don't all come out to you with a list of every access that they have, right?
No, yeah. And like this is the second feature that I've done. The first one I don't love to talk about just because it was a massive learning experience.
Well,
but there were aspects of it that, like, we needed a restaurant and we needed a church, and through our network and through just asking around, we were able to locate both. And the church donated their space to us. We just had to make a donation to the church. And then it was whatever amount we wanted. I think we donated like $200. And then we found a restaurant that allowed us to take over after they closed, and we were able to film from the time they closed until sunup the next morning. And I mean, that cost a chunk of money, and we had to get insurance for it, but like, it was still like,
it was still available.
It was still available, and it ended up working out incredibly well, So like, there's definitely,
and that does add production value to your film.
Yeah. Absolutely,
as opposed to,
but I will say, But I will say, like, Ryan being able to turn his garage and
totally
his front yard, like, and I also think, like, you can look at directors like Wes Anderson, who is one of my favorite directors, and like in Grand Budapest, that entire train sequence is not on a train. They're like on this little trolley, and they made a couple of flats.
Yeah.
And there's just somebody pushing the trolley. And I think it's so clever, and it's a great way to avoid excess cost, So there's creative ways to make a location look like something else.
It's called cheating.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's okay. That's
movie
perfectly.
Magic.
Come on. The problem with a lot of this in a lot of today's films is like everything's CGI, unfortunately. But for indie filmmakers making their first, say, feature mobile film, CGI is probably a little too much, although it can still be done because Conrad Mess did it with a film back in 2014, actually. So the whole film, it was, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to share the link to Conrad Mess on Mobile Film Stories so that you all can watch that. We used to play it at our film festival. And Ryan, you'll have to watch it because it's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I actually, when I first started mobile filmmaking, he was one of my inspirations. So
nice. Yeah. So, all right. So we've got locations. Ryan, let's talk shot lists.
Yeah. So I don't know. I've been on sets with people where they don't know what they're about to shoot. Like, they know that they're going to shoot the scene, but they didn't pre-plan any of it. And
I have also been on a set like that, and I did not love that experience.
It sucks. It's really bad. And,
it's really bad for the AD too, because you can't keep a timing on anything.
Mm-hmm. And I was the AD on. It was a feature film. It's a feature film that's on Netflix right now, and it was. And I didn't want to be that guy, but I had to be that guy that was being the dick the whole time and pushing everybody along. Because and while the DP and the director go, what if we did one of these? What if we did one of that? What if we did? And I'm just like, I was blown away.
Things you should have thought about before.
Yeah. So like,
you have to be that way though, Ryan. When you're an AD, that's part of the job.
Yeah. And there would be people I could hear them like, oh, the AD really needs to step it up around here, and I'm like, God, I'm doing everything but gun to their head, like is where I'm at. To get this thing to move along. And so it's just really disrespectful. And I try to keep that in mind when people come and work on my films, that like I know what I'm going to be shooting. I know, and depending on the film, I might know. So like with Married and Loving It, I have a shot list. Yes, I didn't storyboard it. I don't really need to. I can kind of do like a bird's eye view, kind of a diagram of what the shots are going to be, but once it starts getting into a little bit more visually heavy, like for instance in the middle of my feature film where the husband gets stabbed, or last year I did a werewolf film, this year I did a Frankenstein film.
You want to do the angles.
And those ones I have to storyboard the whole thing. So I've actually, like with my newest one, the Frankenstein one, I storyboard the entire thing. And so I just know what shot is happening next in the edit sequence, but also in my mind, and what we need to get. And then from there, you can kind of like, if something pops up and a really cool idea, then great. But at least you had like a lot of it. You knew what you're doing when you got there, and so when you say something like, when you say like, okay, cool, yeah, cut, move on, you know what you're moving on to. So
let's share with our listeners a little bit about the purpose of the shot list, because it can get confusing between the shot list and the storyboarding. And I'm going to let Levi talk about, because he's really into the storyboarding. But
I do both.
Yeah, you do, because you're very meticulous, and in you should be, in a way, because depending on the people that you have, if they're all comfortable with not being so meticulous, great. But for the most part, for you, and you have, like you said, you had funding, that you had obligations, and you felt very responsible
there's
to.
pressure. There was certainly.
You probably put more pressure onto yourself than you needed to, but that's
I know I
okay.
did.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's called a sense of urgency too.
Yeah.
But the shot list, like I've worked on films where it's like, oh, you know what? You're going to be the script supervisor. Oops, the AD just left, so you're going to be the AD, and that's how I got the job of DP. By the way, I went from script supervisor to AD, and then I went to DP.
I mean, that's very indie, I will say.
Yes, it was, and I'm just like, okay, all right, okay, you know. But as an AD, when I put together, I actually enjoyed it. I enjoy every part of filmmaking, obviously, but I really enjoyed putting that together because we had multiple locations, and when you're looking at, you know, the locations that you have, because you try to determine the dates and times that you could shoot them at this location and then travel to another one. But sometimes you have no control because the person, like in your restaurant, is saying, no, you're not coming here at noon. That's my moneymaker, you know? And so you have to work around that. And so it takes a lot of creativity to create that. And what happens is, you know, films are not shot in sequence. And also one of the reasons why I always say you should have at least someone who can kind of keep track, doesn't have to be a full-on script supervisor, but you want people to be on top of, you know, hey, they were wearing that blue shirt, you know, continuity. Hey, that candle was at the beginning of that day and that candle got burned that night, remember? Oh, okay. You know, things like that. And so the shot list, you know, explain to people, because I feel like I asked and then I'm explaining it. Explain to people so that they can differentiate between the shot list and a storyboard, Levi.
Sure. So for me, what I'd like to back up just a second because once I have the cast in place, I find out everybody's availability, and I make a shooting schedule. So I make and I already I'm figuring out how many days it's going to take. I'm estimating how many pages we can shoot per day, and so I make that first, and that includes of the main crew, like the DP, myself, the producer, whatever. Of the 4 people that we had already at that point, it included who would be on set, the cast that we needed on set that day, if we had a makeup artist, if she needed to be on set that day. And I made the schedule, and for us it was a 15-day shoot. So I made that schedule, and then from that schedule, that just is something that was important.
So this is why it's stressful though, because you're making that schedule and your location is telling you that may not work, and your cast is saying yes, it will. So you know,
So I think for us, because it was a one location, mostly one location, we didn't really have that issue. But there is also a little story within our production where we did have to be flexible, and I can touch on that in a moment. But regarding shot list and storyboard, I storyboard before I shot list, and the reason I storyboard is I want to know exactly. I love seeing the film in my head before I even start doing the shot list. You know, so for me, I wanna draw it out, and I do I don't draw every single frame. Like if I'm cutting back to the same angle, I'm not gonna redraw it, but I do draw out anything special that I want, any angles that I want, any if there's any special shots or transitions or anything. I'm drawing that out in my storyboard, and then from there I do sort of on my shot list, and I did a shot list for every single day. So we shot for 15 days. So with my schedule, I took the scenes that we were planning on shooting, and I actually made a document that had my shot list, okay, this is going to be a close-up or a wide or whatever, and then I pasted the little image that I drew right next to it, and then I had a box that said notes, in case my AD or anybody needed to write a little note this was a good take or whatever. and then like and then we'd circle like the take that we ended up liking the best,
Right.
And so it was like a very meticulous way so that in the editing later on, everything moved quicker. But also we knew the exact next shot we were doing. We knew if we were jumping to a different day, a different scene, and I color coded the schedule so that everybody knew, okay, yellow means that we're in these outfits. Red means that we're in these outfits. So it was like very meticulous so that
you were adding
confusion.
some of the tasks that a script supervisor would have done because
we had a tiny crew.
So a lot of those steps that you just mentioned, usually the script supervisor will do that. She makes a note of you saying this is a good take.
That.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm just making that point out. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. But yeah. So I had 15 shot lists. For the 15 days. And there were days that we did not make it through our entire shot list, and so that would end up getting like. Originally, it was supposed to be 14 days of shooting, but we ended up adding a day because we had to add everything that we didn't get to. And we were very smart about what we added, or what we moved to the day, the new day. Like if we had a certain budget for our makeup artist, so we made sure to get our makeup artist stuff done on the days that she was scheduled to be there. So if there were shots that did not involve a makeup artist, and we were running out of time, we would move those to the new day that we were adding, the pickup day,
Yeah. And so the shot list in a way it's more administrative supposedly.
Oh, it is. Yes.
Than the
it helps
shot
your
list.
editor.
Yep.
It helps your editor. It helps everybody on the team to have
and usually
that.
the AD is the one that's got that with the watch. I mean, they're just like
yes, and they're and the thing for us, because it was 14-hour days, but like we had an entire feature to shoot, and it was like long days. It got to the point that our AD was like, okay, I'm giving you guys 3 good takes, and then you have to move on.
Yep.
And then eventually it would turn into, you don't even get 3 good takes. It's just you get 3 takes, and then you got to move on. So it's like they're paying attention to the time so that everything can get covered.
Yeah. And they're giving you the heads up because that's their job.
Yeah.
So, and that's why you also sometimes on some sets you have more, you have more than one. You have the AD and then AD1, AD2, because they're...
Yeah, we had 3 people wearing that hat.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
Because they have to run between wardrobe and props and, setting up. There's a setup. So there's usually a takedown and a setup between scenes.
Yeah.
And if there's different locations, you have part of the crew go and start doing that, while the director and the DP are hanging out watching and the actors sometimes too, watching what they've shot to make sure they've got everything.
Oh, we didn't even do that.
I know.
Stuff. We would drop footage and move on.
Yeah.
Like it was like there's not enough time. And unfortunately, that did mean that there was one thing in particular that it was shot outside, and it's very hard to see what is in focus on a tiny phone.
Yeah.
When everything is bright, even with the guiding lines on Filmic Pro. So it was a scene that I was in, and my DP at the time, because we shared that responsibility, but he was shooting this scene because I was in it, and everything was out of focus. So we had to reshoot it.
So
that
this
was
would be a good time for
me.
me to insert something that is not an ad, but the Zacuto Smart Z Finder. Because if you had that, the sunlight, your eyes in the viewfinder, and then you're able to see. I mean, it's dark. It's like watching it inside of your own little theater.
Yeah.
And then you can make the adjustments for the focus and all that stuff, and you can see better. So I'm just throwing it. I'm in love with that thing. And
I will say, going back to what you were saying about locations, like there was one location that we had found ahead of time for paralysis that I really enjoyed. It was so there's 2 sequences that happen in sort of this burned out wooded area, and we were able to shoot one of the scenes in that area because it still looked okay, but the city had actually cleared out a lot of the burned out brush, so we had to on a like literally on the seat of our pants find a new location. So while we were shooting one day, my producer went scouring through LA, researching like areas that had recent wildfires that we could guerrilla film this. And and she ended up finding a wooded area up in Agora Hills. But the problem was, and this is something that happens and you have to be flexible, the problem was when we got to that new location, I went sight unseen to it. She's the only one who had seen it, and she sent me some photos, and I was like, sure, it looks fine. But once we got there, it was a very hilly area.
Oh, gosh.
And the storyboard and the shot list that I had prepared did not work in that location. The camera operator, the DP, was not able to do, because it was such a hilly terrain, he kept falling. So we had to completely throw out what we had planned, and he had to come up with something on the fly because it was another scene that I was in. So it was
so this is why filmmakers get paid the big bucks, guys.
Yeah, but it ended up working.
Yeah.
But like that was my most stressful day on set for sure, because it was like everything I had prepared for was trash.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, what am I supposed to do here? You know,
And you do it again. You do it
and
all
I'm
over
going to do it again.
Exactly. Because like I always
Yeah.
say, filmmakers are very
Yeah.
special people.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the most
we like to
positive
torture
way.
ourselves.
Yes. Well, if you, like I said, you have to like the challenge.
Levi, you were saying how, doing the shot list and it helps you like see, like, or doing the storyboards helps like you visualize the entire film. And
Yeah.
like because I told you guys what kind of a crunch time I had making this last one, I'm honestly really stressed out until I have the storyboards done. And then I get really excited because I can actually see the whole film.
Yes.
And every
Yes.
shot, and I
Exactly.
just know that it's almost like my way of feeling like, okay, it's going to be okay. Like, you know what you're going to do.
Yeah. Because it's like a paint by numbers. You now know what your film is.
Yeah.
Like, the full picture is literally right there on your storyboard. Yeah.
Okay, so now we've got locations, we got a shot list, we've got a storyboard, and now let's talk about props and sets. Meaning, when I say dress up the set, there's the property master, right? There's something that I don't want to get too far into it, but there's something that you have to be careful with. We had an awesome property master in one of the films that I worked on, where he literally reinvented all the brands in the refrigerator.
Oh, that's cool.
So the mayonnaise was not Kraft or whatever. He made up the brands. And these are things that are just sort of in the background, quick shot, whatever. It was incredible. He printed out all the little labels with the new names for them.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And we also had a set with at a restaurant that we were shooting, and we had it the whole night, and we had to set up all these candles because it was a blind woman, a blind girl, who is being romanced by this guy, and because she was blind, she could still sort of see the lights. And he wanted her to walk down this hallway and sort of at least kind of see the lights of all the candles. It was super. I mean, we were all like, oh my God, it was awesome. But doing that to that extent, you can do it on a low budget. You just have to have somebody who's meticulous and focused on doing that, because you can design the labels and print them out on stickers and put them on the thing. But you have to be conscious. You have to be conscious about the brands and never include a brand unless you've got, the person from the brand, the brand itself giving you approval for that. So basically nothing.
Yeah.
And then when you do, it's kind of like, Pepsi or something like that. It's like, oh, well, we wanted to be in part of that. We paid to be in this film. Or you got paid, you paid them, So let's talk about that. I also want to let our listeners know, when you're getting your crew together, right, at this point, you're probably now assembling your crew. Once you have the locations, you have the cast, you have the shot list, you have the storyboard, at that point is when we had a meeting with the crew that was going to come in. We had someone for lighting, gaffers, and people like that. Me as a script supervisor, and then we sat down and we found out what the more of the exact things that we needed to know, right, to make this film happen. Like when we were going to be needed, what locations, So we had the schedule. We also had a copy of the shot list. We had the screenplays. I certainly did, but you give one to everybody. You give everybody a copy of the screenplay. And then we already knew, like, you have lighting, you have, sound, the sound mixers, all those people come in after because, of course, they know what they're doing. And now they can start putting together, okay, it's going to be at this location, and they can start realizing what their job is going to entail. What I wanted to bring in the mobile filmmaking part is, let's say you want to have 3 extra cameras. Well, I just found out that you can rent phones. And so if you can rent phones, then you don't have to worry about, and they're short-term rentals. And so basically those could be set up so you don't have to worry about borrowing somebody's phone and telling them to delete all their videos and photos and all those things. But I think that's also a good idea. So you have extra cameras. You also have props. You have them. You can use them for microphones, mobile microphones, basically. And if you don't, like if you're shooting somebody from far away and you don't have to sync lips, but if you don't have to worry about that because they're not right there as a close-up, you can have 2 guys talking way out there across the street. You can shoot them from over here, and then you can add the audio later in post.
We've even used our phones for lighting as well.
Yeah, for that too.
Yeah, we just have people like just turn on their flashlight and help us out.
And you can even, in very low light situations, you can even set up, bring up a graphic that's like a blue square or something. Or a red square or whatever. Just make sure that it doesn't go to sleep on you.
Sure. Yeah.
So now you want to dress up your film set, right? And take care of all those other little things. So you're at that point just ready to start scheduling the shoots. And hopefully you by then already have a schedule anyways. Things like Levi said fall through at the last minute, though. So it's nice to have a backup plan and then another backup to that, right, guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think you should always anticipate having a pickup day just for safety. I think it's beneficial, and that way you're not really in too much of a crunch. That's just my opinion.
You're professionally correct. Yeah, it's always a good idea to have that. And then sometimes other things that happen too is after the fact or even during post.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we ended up doing a pickup day a year after we shot principal photography, because after I had cut the film together, I realized, the story's not clear in this moment, and this moment, so what shots can I add to clear it up, And so a year after we shot principal photography, we had a pickup day. Yeah.
A year after.
Yeah, and it's funny because I watch the film and I personally have a hard time going, how do people not see that her hair is different? But nobody sees it, so yeah. Her hair is a little bit longer.
Now I was going to have to watch it again for like the 7th time.
It's like Scorsese's film, Who's That Knocking at My Door, with Harvey Keitel. It's like his first film, Scorsese's, and then because he could only shoot it anytime he would get money, he'd shoot a little bit more. And then, so it took him like a year and a half. And Harvey Keitel clearly like is changing in so many ways. Like, as the year goes by. And I worked on another film. A friend of mine did a feature film. I won't say his name because it'll be kind of fairly clear as to who it was. But for anybody who might listen, but it was pretty obvious we did a screening, like a private screening, just to with just the above the line, I guess, like crew, to see how the movie. But it was fairly obvious that one of the actresses needed a lot more work, and it became clear that we need to go back and maybe reshoot her close-ups and focus just on those to try to like amp some of the talent from her in a sense, and bring her performance up to speed with where the rest of the movie was. And I mean, so those are days that add in, and you do it like a year later. There's parts of Married and Loving It that, especially where it's my character and I'm being stabbed and cut to pieces. There's some of the shots didn't happen until a year later.
Yeah.
So
I love that though.
It's
it's so that like that's one of my favorite things is like that we can pull it off and people have no idea, you know? Yeah. Although I'm like, oh, her curl pattern is different and people aren't noticing.
Well, you can imagine with all the work I did as a script supervisor, how much of those things, you know, even watching movies that I notice, and I'm like, I didn't notice that. Just stop noticing, you know, that kind of stuff, because it's like, it's not your movie, like whatever.
Yeah. It's hard
Jason,
to cut that off,
have you ever worked on a film where things have happened and, you know, they've changed the game on you from a music perspective?
Yeah, for sure. I worked on a film where, so I was writing as they were editing. And so when that happens, sometimes it can change quite a bit. You know, the film itself is changing quite a bit. And so you kind of have to adapt. You have to be flexible and adapt and add and cut things in the music. And then there's also been other situations. There's been 2 times where I was given some musical instruction, kind of like direction from the director. One of the times, this is before they even started shooting, one of the times I knew that it was not a good idea, like the director. But I wanted to please him on some level, you know, it's his baby. Yeah. So I kind of took the seed of what he was asking me for, and then I kind of used that and embellished on it. And then later on, the producer on the film got in touch with me and was basically kind of saying, like, kind of ignore what he told you to do with the music. So I kind of was able to like satisfy both people in that situation because I took the seed of what the director asked from me. And then, you know, I was more kind of on the same page as the producer in terms of what needed, in terms of music, what needed to be there. So that worked out. And that was great. And there's another situation where, you know, I thought the director, actually, I do think he has really good musical instincts, but what he wanted and what the executive producer wanted were 2 quite different things. And so it's just part of my job is to kind of figure out, like, who is the ultimate decider in this situation, you know, because it's not always, you know, you're kind of just coming.
It's not always the director.
It's not always the director, and it's not always clear. Like, you know, like you're coming into this thing, especially when you have like a crazy deadline, and you're just kind of, you're jumping into this chaos.
The pressure. Sometimes. You're inside the pressure cooker.
Basically, yeah. So, you know, those are just challenges, you know, that is just part of the territory.
That we all love.
Yeah, I mean.
Can I ask? I have a question, Jason, and it's kind of based off of my own experience, and I feel bad, and I feel grateful that my composer is as flexible as he is. He's also a close friend of mine, so I know that I have this flexibility with him. But when I first cut the film, I had the version that I was like, this is it. This is the final version of the film. And it was 2 hours and 1 minute long. And my composer composed to that. And then I had like a handful of people watch it. And like the general consensus was,
these are 5 different Levi's that watched it.
Yeah. The general consensus was that it dragged in certain moments, and I agreed. So I went through, and there's one guy that I like am very grateful for, but he was like, cut everything that you don't like. And I was like, but I had my composer, and he was like, here's the thing, you paid the composer, it was a work for hire situation. So like he will be flexible with it, and he was like, but I do feel bad that like his music ended up changing because of how I had to cut the film, you know.
But he's making the music for you, for your film. Right,
yes,
Jason?
I mean, you have.
But I'm curious, like, has that happened with you as well?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's weird. I've had a kind of various sort of experiences. So sometimes there was one film where the picture was completely picture locked.
Yeah.
And I received the film.
Oh, I said the same thing and then I changed it. So let's just be honest. There's no the picture lock is never real.
Well, it was in this case because I scored the film and I had zero revisions. The first things I said were the things that wound up in the film, and it's screened and it's been around the country and stuff and festivals, and so I've had that kind of thing happen, and then I don't expect that to be every time, And then I've had other situations where I wrote music, like I said earlier, just based on conversations and reading the script over. And again, no revisions. They actually cut the film to my music. And
nice.
Cool.
So that's kind of like the flip side, but every situation is different. And then I've had other situations where, like I said, this one that I have in mind in particular, where it's being cut as I'm writing. And so it's just changing
as you go.
Yeah, it's changing. It's some things are shortened, some things are long, some scenes are longer. Yeah. And you just have to kind of be flexible and be okay with that. Yeah. It's just part of the job,
Well, I will say, going off of what you just said, it screened and it went through the festival run and all that. Paralysis has now screened at a number of festivals.
And you're still changing it.
And I did recently cut 4 minutes from it. But the reason I did is because I've now watched it so many times in the festival run that there were things that I'm like, this is not necessary. Mm-hmm. So I have cut 4 minutes, but this is like the distribution cut that we're sending out to potential distributors.
They're going to give you a little bit of
I don't care what they say. This is my movie. Like, if you don't want to distribute my film as is,
you want it on Netflix, you gotta do.
I will post it myself on Tubi if I have to. Or so Amazon.
Funny.
Yeah,
that's so funny. So you see, guys, this is what happens. The thing about film is, it's a science, and it's an art. And then you have the technology.
It's a living, breathing art form.
And the technology is part of the skill set. And so you're blending all these things together, but at the heart of it, they're all artists. The musician is an artist, the director is an artist, the writer is an artist, the editor is an artist. And so you have everybody kind of at some point kind of stepping on each other for how should I say, defending their art, right? This is my art, and it feels kind of a little bit personal sometimes.
Oh, it's very vulnerable.
And artists can get, depending on who it is, they can get very emotional sometimes, but they also tend to they come down to their senses, because in the end, it's the teamwork, and everybody then.
It's a village,
Yeah, and then once you see it, when it's finished, you're going, oh my God, I don't know why I was ready to murder you on this. This is perfect, Yeah. So
it's one of my favorite things when like once we had everything together and we all came together and watched it. And honestly, we didn't watch it together until it premiered at the Culver City Film Festival, our first festival. Yeah. But it was such an incredible moment for everybody on the team to experience that together. It was just it's we all worked toward this for however long it took. Yeah.
And I think it speaks to one of the reasons in one of our previous episodes that we were talking about why everybody in the crew should also be at the festival. Being a part of that.
If they can. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, but they should at least be invited, and you should let them know, hey, we're gonna all be together. We're not leaving you out. We're not Sochi like that. So anything else you guys want to bring up?
Yes, sorry. We did not actually touch on props, and we intended to. So I say,
you got really quiet. So I thought, I guess I do want you to bring up props, though, Levi, because the props for your film were excellent. And it was kind of like what I was talking about with the film that I was working at. The guy was putting all the labels and everything, and you did a lot of that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the main thing, like avoiding labels, like in every shot, if there was something with a label, we turned it. But beyond that, ahead of time, one of the things that you do is you go through your script and you figure out all the props that you need. And, what we ended up doing is making a spreadsheet. And if people had certain things, they would send images of the thing they owned. And we would, or I would, because I was the person who got to make that decision, I would say yes or no. And if it was a no, then we would end up finding something online that we could, or in Goodwill or wherever, that we could buy for cheap and then like do something creative with. So like one of the things in our script was an old pencil box, and I found this brand new wooden box on Amazon, and I bought it for like $10. And then when it arrived, I personally distressed it. So I like made it look older. I scratched it up a whole bunch. I designed the label for the cover of it. And so it's like there's things that you can do to cut costs in clever, creative ways. We have a demon book in ours that is definitely a copyrighted book. But like what I ended up doing is I bought the book, I scraped the cover off of it, and I made my own design on the cover. So it's like it's ways of like taking things and making it your own so that you're not gonna get in trouble, and but
no,
like
it's actually
finding creative ways.
It's so awesome because it's, I don't know if you ever watched those making of things that HBO used to put on, but you see the meticulous work that they would go through. Like I remember watching something about the Lord of the Rings, how they made up their own language and things like that. And you're going, and I mean, this whole thing was about the language, and they made that, and the weapons and the carvings on things that no one was even going to see, right? That kind of, it's so impressive. And the thing is, like, once your film is done, you all take this pride around it. Even the things that maybe the viewer doesn't get to see, even in a 60-foot screen, right? But you all know this, and it's really important because you don't really know during the production how good it's going to turn out. You have the director's vision, and the director's vision is not always, your vision, even if you're reading the screenplay. And then when you see it done and when everything is finished, it's I told you this before, right? It's your legacy. And it's a forever thing, and it's always there. And you've got, after we're gone, there are people who are going to watch these things, and they're going to remember all the work, and they're going to notice all the work that you put into that, And I think that's very special, and it's definitely worthy of the time and the effort that you put in it. Filmmaking is a very special thing, and if you're a mobile filmmaker or an indie filmmaker, if you're a part of a film, and it doesn't matter what part you play in the filmmaking process, you're special, and you should be very proud of yourself. And we'll celebrate you at the Film Festival 2024. Right?
Right on.
Yeah. So, all right. So, any absolutely last words?
I try to learn as much as I can about the filmmaking process, and I've been doing this for especially the last couple of years. And so, like, I was hanging on every word in this conversation we had tonight. And the more that I've learned about filmmaking, the more that I've come to understand that every single person involved, no matter what their role is important, and it kind of all is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
my gosh.
Yeah.
I think, after that, guys, if you're not inspired, I mean, we just gave you a really good walkthrough on making your feature film. If you've been making a bunch of short films, with your smartphone, with another camera, whatever, but make a few shorts with your smartphone to get to know your best friend in that way. And once you're done with that, make a feature film. download this podcast, save it onto your laptop or on your phone, and play it as you need it so that you can take notes later on the things that you need. These guys, as you know, have been winning awards for the work that they're doing. So listen to them, and they're very experienced with the smartphone filmmaking that they do. And so, yeah. All right, guys, I hope you get a lot from this. And as much as we all did, we're learning from each other too. So say goodbye to our listeners.
Until next time.
See you next week.
See you next time.
2 weeks.